Hey guys, we have done a totally different project again. We're always thinking of things and trying to come up with different scenarios that y'all might be able to use with the yarn. So we use what we call, it's Nifty Splash yarn. I've got three colors. I've got gray, I've got it was more of a navy royal blue, but it was a darker blue, and then it was a variegated one, which was but they're all splash, and so they're all, the solids do complement the variegated parts. So our intention here was to make a couple of placemats, and when we did this, we also said, well, this make great table runner too. So what we're going to do through this video, and probably some couple of ones after this, we're going to show you how to make a table runner, sew it. We're also going to show you how to chop it up and to turn it into placemats. And then if we have extra yardage or cloth left over, I'm going to show you how to make a couple of coasters. So it's all going to be with the sewing machine. We did not hem stitch anything, so it's with the sewing machine. I am going to show you a lot of pinning techniques. I used to be in production, so this is easy to turn yardage into types of things. If you have and this is important in the weaving process, consistent PPIs, especially because this is a grid. I don't know if you can see that so much, but it is a grid, and everything is we tried to make sure that it was equal, so it wasn't oblong, but things were the same. All right, so we're going to show you that. Right now we've got a table runner that we're going to show, and I'm going to show you how to chop it here and chop it here and then sew it. Okay, so she's going to zoom in and we're going to show you a couple of pinning techniques to allocate for fringe allowance. All right, so we're on the very edge, which is where I started weaving. This edge this gets a little bit tricky because you notice that you can never pack your weft picks tight enough as it would here. You can see that this square is a lot larger than this square, even though it is the same amount. I also did a couple of picks extra in case a couple of these needed to be taken out. All right, so what I'm doing is starting from the edge here, and I'm going to count 4 picks. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got my finger there. So it's about a 1/2 inch, okay? I'm going to put a pin in here just as a marker, all right? Now I'm going to count 3 picks. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to do an edge here. So what I've done is I checked this boundary, and I have, this part's actually going to be fringe. This part's going to actually just be part of the table runner. It'll make more sense once we go along, okay? So I do that one, and then I also check just to make sure that the opposite end, this end right here, actually has the same amount. So from this side too, 1, 2, 3, 4, put a pin, and then I'm going to count 3, 1, 2, 3, put a pin. All right, you see those? All right, so now what I'm going to do is cut this fabric, and everybody freaks out when you cut the fabric, but you got to, you're going to have to. One, this piece had a sewn edge here just to keep it all in when we're washing it, but you do have to cut this, okay? And it makes sense once you see what I'm going to do. All right, so here goes. All right, so what I'm going to do, to reiterate, I'm going to cut where this white needle is, okay? And to make sure, since this is over here, I want to make sure that I've got the same place over here, because a lot of times you'll think you're in it and then you cut too short. So just to make sure what I'm doing, you see how I'm drawing my finger here plus here? I need to cut in this area, need to cut in this area, need to cut in this area, need to cut in this area. And if you want to put your pin there just as a marker, okay? You can see where I'm cutting. I'm going to cut in between the 2 picks. Not on it, but in between. All right, here goes. So, nice pair of scissors is very important. Watch me pull the pin out because I've already started where I'm doing this. If you cut this now, you're going to get a very straight line. See where I'm pulling my pin out? I'm cutting on this one only. I'm going to do this again on the other side to give you a chance to watch it, okay? This part right here, trash. All right? Keep that pin. Don't move that pin. So the next side over here, the same thing. Make sure that you know, and you can, all I'm doing is following it down right through here, right here, right here. Well, I just lost it. I gotta make sure. All right, so right through here, I'm going to cut in between the two picks. These are my weft picks, okay? And as I cut, I am very careful to stay in that. You can reference it as a ditch. Pull your pin out. Once again, very carefully cut. See what I'm doing? I'm cutting in between. In between. To know you are correct, after you finish cutting this, you can see here 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all I did was just cut a straight edge. So the next step, this is probably the hardest part right here, because you really need to be careful when you're doing this part. If I just took my sewing machine and I tried to sew in between these two threads, the weft threads, it's probably going to nick this one and nick this one, and they won't come out. In order to fix that, or to make it easier, this is what we do. So on the fourth pick, 1, 2, 3, 4, on the fourth pick, you see I have it right here. What I'm doing is I'm going to pull it up a little bit and I'm going to snip it, okay? And to do that, if you just pulled really hard, all of these are going to come out. So what I'm doing is I'm holding this pretty stiff. But you see how I just pulled my weft pick up? See how it's got a little tail here? I'm going to take my scissors. I am now going to nick this one, cut it. And y'all are like, why is she doing this? So now what you're doing, watch where I'm holding. I'm going to grab that one and I'm gently going to pull it out. If you notice, there's now an open space or a channel. This is where I'm going to be sewing. Okay, I don't need this pin anymore because I've already cut my fabric or my thread. So I'm pulling this out. You see, this is hard to understand. When you're pulling this, don't pull straight up. This is my tail. Pull to where the tail wants to come out. So this way. If you feel that it's easier to cut this as you go, you can also do that. So once again, if you want to trim it, do anything you want. Just don't trim it past this part, because there's going to be a reason for keeping it about 1 inch long. So when I get to the edge here, watch what I'm doing. Pull this. As you go to the selvage area, if you have drawn in a lot, it might be harder to pull out. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling it to the very last pick, and then that's it. I'm not going to pull it past the selvage around. This part right here happens to be the same color as the edge. This one's going to be sewn, and it's going to be part of my fringe. So that's going to work out well. So from this side is done. Now I'm coming all the way over here. I'm going to do the same thing. Here was the edge thread. I'm pulling it. There's a certain way, if you know how to pull them, they're very easy. When we do the coasters, you'll understand this part too, because this is a beginning. I use this technique in most everything I'm doing for a channel that I need fringe with. So once again, if it gets too long, just cut it. And I'm doing this slow. This is not a fast process right here. Cotton tends to, when you wash it, it embeds in each other. So sometimes you'll feel resistance, and you just want to be careful pulling it, because otherwise these 3 threads are going to fall out, and you don't want that. So once again, I'm pulling, and I'm all the way here to the edge. I think I'm going to trim this one too. Normally I could just pull it straight out, but because I have a finished edge right here, this is the reason why I'm doing this. So here I'm very careful when I get to the edge. Pull, pull. And remember, this side's the same color as the edge, so it's going to be part of my fringe. I'm not going to trim it. I'm just going to wait. Okay, so this side's done. Now don't wave it around. That'll still fall out if you're not careful. Now I'm going to do this side, and then we're going to sew, and I'm going to show you how the fringe appears. All right, so we're ready to sew the channel, is what I'm calling it. And it looks hard to see, but there is nothing right here because we took out that weft pick. I still have my 3 here on the edge. All right, I have 1, 2, 3, the little 4 picks are over here. I took that pick out. All right, so as I did that, notice this one is my weft pick. When I sew, I am going to start here and I'm going to back stitch, grab it, and then continue to go forward. You need to make sure you grab this pick. All right, so I'm going to do that right now. Went forward, now I'm going to go backwards, and I want to clip this one, okay? So when I go back, see how I'm going all the way to the edge? Now I'm using a white thread, so you can probably see this. If you would like to choose something that's more of a pewter gray, whatever matches your edges, that's up to you. This is hard since I've gone to the edge. You now need to push the fabric this way, watching the needle. This is where if you have a needle or a smaller pair of scissors or something, you're actually just holding the fabric. And as I go down, once it grabs underneath those teeth, line this up. This line right here, line it up. Okay, don't try to line up, just look right here. Don't look at the needle, you're looking right here. So as you sew, you're just following in that channel. Your stitch count probably does matter. If you're doing really wide stitches, you're not grabbing each individual warp thread. So you need to play with your machine, or I would assume you would know a little bit about that. Once again, I'm looking at this line and my channel. I did wash this material in the wash machine and then I dried it on hot. I wanted it to shrink, okay? That's what people usually do with their placemats. So at this end, I'm doing the same thing. Here's my weft pick. So what I'm going to do is lay it down. I'm just pretending like it's part of my fringe. I don't want to sew it at a slant. I want to sew it straight down, just like this. As I go to the edge, I'm going to reverse. Be careful. And then I'm going to go forward. And that's all I need to do. Raise, raise. Pull this out. I'm clipping this. Don't do this one yet. I'm going to show you real quick what we're going to do, because I can do this side now and then I'm going to sew the other side. But this side is going to be done just like the other side. So right here I did my seam. I sewed along the channel. So now what I'm going to do is I don't even know how to say this. I'm going to generate fringe. You're not making it because it's already there. But what I'm now going to do is remove that weft pick. This is one of the 3, and when you pull this out, you can see it goes all the way to the edge, and it'll come right back out. So here I'm pulling this one. This one will pull out all the way, all the way, all the way. And as I get to this side right here, this is what I said. This was that first weft pick. You just cut it. That's the only one you're actually going to trim. You're going to give it a little haircut. These should be pretty straight. Come here to the other side where the 2 are here, and you're going to trim that. Take all your threads. Make sure you're not cutting your fringe. This comes out. Make sure on the back side here, this one comes out. But now, you basically have the fringe already there. And you don't have to trim it because you already did that. So that's that. So we're back again, and we have a table runner, which I really liked. I was real specific when I wove it to make sure that I ended on the same color, both sides, so that the table runner would be symmetrical. Now, if you were using one color, it really wouldn't make a difference, okay? But for us, we're using the grid, the gray grid, as our marker line. All right, so now I just happen to have done both sides, and I'm just going to show you now. We're going to make placemats, and yes, we're going to cut this up, but we're just using the same material to show you how we were doing this. So your length of the placemat will differ depending on your beat. Okay, so I tried to be pretty consistent. I have to be specific where I'm ending it so that this side and the end of the other side of the placemat symmetrical. Okay, so if I measured from basically not the fringe but from the edge of where I sewed it to here, it's about 16, a little over. Okay, so I'm going to make right in here is going to be one of my edges. Okay, I'm just going to show you here, right here. I'm going to show you something specific when we move up. So then on the other side, since I've already sewn this side, I'm just going to go from this side in. Okay, so doing the same thing. Measure it. Sometimes you count and you may have missed something. It's better to measure it. So I know it's in the 16-inch ballpark range, which is right here. And I am, again, in the center of a gray stripe. So I'm going to have one placemat, one placemat. If I went to the center of this, this is not enough for a placemat, okay? However, I'm going to show you how to make coasters with this, okay? Same technique, just a little bit easier on this one, but this is going to be our next project. But right now I'm just going to show you how to cut and sew the placemats, and you're going to have two. All right, so this is the most difficult part, is that you have to realize this side is the placemat, all right, not this side. So what I did here is I have 4 threads, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, I took this one out, so I need to consider that. I don't have 3, but I need to count 4. So from the very edge, once again, here's a gray stripe, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to put a pin. Make sure you put your pins, all right? There's a pin there. And then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, put a pin here. So this right here, this section here, will be part of the placemat. This section should be the fringe area. Okay, remember that we cut. So on this one, I'm going to count 3. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So I'm counting this, 3. And then over here, 1, 2, 3. You will notice that if you pinned your edges, it was looser. This is much tighter because it was inside, after I'd been beating, so I had a much solid edge, okay? I have done this in the past, so I'm going to reiterate this. When you cut this, if you're using the same color pins, you might want to take and say, okay, I've got to cut the yellow ones. So you notice I put a white one here. Otherwise, you start here and you meant to cut here. And then you cut your fringe off. Then your placemat's shorter. So you have to think about this, because once you cut it, can't do much about it. So I'm just making it real careful right here. So what I'm going to do is cut this part here, then I'm going to flip the other placemat on the other end of the table runner, and I'm actually going to do the same thing I did to the edge of the placemat and have fringe here. So I am cutting on the yellow one, not this one, the yellow one. So I'm going to cut here, and as I cut, you're also cutting in between. All right, so remove the yellow. Remove the yellow. You just need to make sure you're maintaining that same cut. Be very careful, go slow. See what I'm doing? I'm going very slow. You should have the 3 picks right here after that other pin. So that's going to be a placemat. I'm going to end up pulling that channel out and then sewing it. So I'll have fringe on this side, finish edges here. So that's the first placemat. I had the placemat. This side was the sewn edge, and now I'm going to do this one. I do have a little situation at the other end I'm going to show you. So let me sew this side first. And get my pedal. A little long-legged. want to say something here. You can see that, or I can see it as I'm doing this, that my warp threads, which are running this way, are very flat. Okay, so I can see they're not compromised in any way. They're all just laying very nice and flat. As I get down here, we still have this thread. That was that one. But if you look right here, there's something wicky's going on right in this area here. So let me get a little closer. You can see that this one right here is actually out of the threads that were holding it. This one looks kind of bunched. So what I'm going to do before I sew it is I'm going to pull it out, and all I'm doing is I'm laying them flat this way. That's the way they need to be going for your fringe to stay straight or flat. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm sewing them. Very important to get that edge. I can't stress that enough because that's what's going to hold all the weft picks in on both sides. So once again, you can see here, this is my weft picks. They just come out, okay? The one that's tethered in there is the one that's going to be cut, okay? But the rest of these, because you didn't sew them, should just fall out. And the fringe is exactly a 1/2 inch all the way across, okay? This is that one weft pick. I'm just making it a part of the fringe. And as I go over here, these were those ones that were kind of wicky, but they're straight. I'll take these two, and I'm going to trim these. So now I have fringe on this side, same amount. Fringe on this side. So I actually have a placemat now, a little over 16 inches long. So, yes, we cut the table runner. I know some of you thought, why? Well, this is really a technique, how to get more things out of a longer piece of fabric. And in this case, the table runner did look great. And if you wanted to leave it at that, that was fine. So now what we did was I had, this was the end of the table runner, placemat, and this was my middle section. And then I had the other one right here. So what I did was when I cut here and here, I made the 2 placemats. So I have this section here to do something with. So nice placemat here and a nice placemat here. So we have 2 of these, okay? So those are good to go. This piece right here, I just want to show you how to make some coasters out of it. Now, because I have a grid system, which is this grid system, it's harder to get more out of it identical. Okay, so the technique, this is just a technique. These are going to be asymmetrical or not square in terms of the grid like this one was. But this is just a technique. Coasters are much easier to make if they're done this way. If it was just a solid piece of fabric, a lot of you have tons of stuff left over and you have a piece left over and you don't know what to do with it. So this is really easy, okay? So let me explain first how to just get the area cut. All right, so this was that section piece that I had left over, and I'm going to try to get 2 columns out of this, okay? And what I mean by that is this is a column and a column, okay? I want my columns to be equal, okay? So if I measure my fabric, I've got 11.5. So I've decided I want my coasters to be 5 inches square, all right? So what I'm going to do is just cut 5 inches and then 5 inches. So let's see where 5 inches, maybe it'll fall on, let's do that. So I'm gonna cut it. I'm just making this up as I go because it's gonna have a design in it. I'm gonna use this blue stripe right here as my actual line. So when I cut this, notice I am cutting off, this is what's important, this side was the finished selvage as you were weaving. So this was the side that you were keeping straight. Okay, so this is what I'm removing. I didn't do that on the placemat or the table runners. But for coasters, wow, it makes it so much easier. So what I'm going to do is just cut here all the way down. If you have a line, a color, it's great. So what I did was I removed this one, come back to my material. Let's do 5 inches. All right, this one didn't hit on this one, so I've got to see where it's going to fall. So I've got 3 threads. So now I'm going to do this one, 3 threads, and cut. So basically this is a column if you think about it. If you have, so I have selvage, that's going to be waste. I have 1 column. Could I get another one out of here? Let's see. 5 inches. Yep. So I've got 2 picks past this blue one. I'm going to do that one too. Might as well make them if you got them, if you want to. Some people like them just a little bit all different. That's okay. So now I have 2 columns and another selvage edge. These 2 pieces, waste. Don't want them. This is what I'm working with. So now I've cut a column. Now I'm going to cut squares. Okay? 5 inches, magic number. You can make your coasters any size. I'm just picking 5. All right, from here to here, 5 inches. Okay? You can see where this one has, I'm going to cut here. So now I have a 5-inch square. I'm going to do a 5-inch square. I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know. Let's see if this is 10 inches. Ah! I didn't plan that, folks. I did not plan that. So let's see where 5 goes to here. I mean, if it's off a pick, it's not going to matter. Need to be gentle with these. If you notice, all of the edges are not sewn. They're not held together. They're just basically there because of the weave. So if you fluff it up, it's going to mess up. All right, so let me show with these first, and then I'll go back to this one in case we need to do it. All right, so I'm going to move this one aside. I have these 3. This one I didn't check to see if it was 5. It could be a smidge longer, which it is. And me, I have to cut things even. So I'm going to trim off the 2 picks. I'm cutting in between the picks, whether it was a warp pick or a weft pick. Notice the stripes are odd, so they're not the same. All right, so the same principle I did with the placemat and the table run, I'm going to do the same thing. How many of these threads do I need to use to make my fringe? Okay, and so when I do that, if you want to measure, they were about a 1/2 inch. So when I put my tape down here, you can see there's 3 picks, and it's the 4th pick that I'm pulling. So I have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pull the 4th one on every side. This side, this side, this side, this side. All right, this is where you need to be very, very careful. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, 1, 2, 3, I'm at the very edge of this. I'm sticking my blunt tapestry needle underneath this, not a pointed one, because you don't want to ply it. You want to get the whole thread, make sure it's just it. If you notice the way I'm holding this, I take these 2 and I'm holding here, and then I take my thumb and this ring finger and I'm holding it. You want to be very careful when you pull this up so that none of this becomes unwoven. So after you've got a tail, you grab the tail, hold, and you're almost just pulling very gently, and you are pulling this out. So I have a channel. That was quicker than the other one I did on the table runner and the placemats, but I don't have a finished edge on any of these. So I'm going to this side, be very careful. Count 3, 1, 2, 3, pull your 4th one. You cannot pull it in the center. You need to go closer to the edge. 1, 2, 3, pull this one. Okay, you're pulling the 4th one up. Grab it, pinch, pull, and then pull tight. Turn it around. 1, 2, 3, pinch, put your needle underneath there, pull it up, grab, pull. That one comes easier. This one happens to be the blue line. And then pull. So technically, I have the same thing of what I've done in the placemat and the table runner is I have a channel all the way around. And I will sew this, and then I'm going to pull out, and I'll have fringe the same all the way around. All right, guys, I'm getting ready to sew my channel on my little coasters. These are 5-inch square. On the placemat and the table runner, I actually started sewing here. But on coasters, I don't need that because all 4 sides will be fringe. So I'm going to start, doesn't matter which side, just start in the center. Okay, you don't need to backstitch. That's another thing. You can if you feel like, but I'm going to show you a faster way. Okay, so like I said, I am doing this from the center. However, you need to make sure that the needle is going to fall in the trough, not on one of these threads, but in the channel or the trough. Okay, so I have lined up, once again, my line right here is in there. I'm going to set my needle just to make sure I'm good. All right. These don't take long, but you got to make sure when you get to the corner that you don't go all the way to the edge. You need to stop where the channel stops, and you need to turn a corner. Okay. So turning corners on these are going to be a little, they go quick, so don't lose track of where you're at. I'm not back stitching. Okay. This is my end right here where I got my needle, right there. So I'm going. Might want to walk my needle to the end of that corner just to be sure. And when I do that, set your needle, set it down so that when you lift your presser foot up, you can just rotate your fabric. Set your presser foot down again, and I see that I'm back in this channel. I've sewn that one halfway. So now I'm going to sew this one. Looking again where I'm going to have to stop. Feel comfortable, walk your needle. Right there, make sure it ends up down, okay? Lift your presser foot, rotate. Set the presser foot, start again. I'm walking it. When I'm using this splash yarn, it's variegated. It is hard to see where one stops and starts, so I am being a little cautious. My needle is set, turning. I did lift up. Walked it, turn. Now, I didn't cut these threads for a reason, so I know exactly where these started. So what I'm going to do is now run over this stitch, okay? So these are going to stay just like that. I'm going to start. As you can see, here's the stitch right here. I'm going to take this one and run on top of these. If you want to back stitch now, you can, but pretty much where you've grabbed the start of the threads. Lift up, take your needle out, and then see what I'm doing is pulling. I do have more threads to trim. So right here, I have several threads. I had the 2 that I started with and the 2 I back stitched. So what I'm going to do is take the top threads, trim that one, flip it over, trim this one, trim this one, well, if I can get it. And this is where the magic part comes from. I just think it's really cool. Each one of the threads, the 3 on the edges, these will just come out, okay? They're not going to be tethered. You don't have to trim them because none of them were actually, you know, they didn't have a selvage side. I'm pulling these 2. They'll come out really easy. These, I had one right here, and then I had these 3 right here. You can actually grab those and just pull them. So really what you've got is fringe all the way around it now, both sides, all sides. And it's flipped, you know, reversible.